As a start to this likely hour-long video that I'll be cursing you with, I just want to preface. Danganronpa is a special kind of awful. Like, you couldn't easily place it in one of the 9 circles of hell, but you'd certainly keep the catalog handy as a backup torture method for anyone who ends up there. Because as we all know, all bad writers go to hell. That's why Virgil's there. But so many people love Danganronpa, so why am I here saying that it's the worst piece of literature written since the Aeneid? Well, not only is the writing structure and dialogue garbage, so is its representation of minorities and heavy topics. Bad writing is a veritable breeding ground for bad representation. You can have one without the other, but it doesn't seem to happen very often. A good writer, unless isolated to the subject they're writing about, which a good writer hopefully wouldn't let happen anyway, also wouldn't be so stupid as to leave in the glaring bigotry and blatant ignorance underlying their story. Unless they were trying to achieve one of 2 things. 1, the writer wanted to speak on bigotry and intentionally made the story in some way about a character's relationship to it. 2, the writer wanted to throw in a bit about bigots doing bigoted shit and have that undercut a certain aspect of the plot, but not directly interact with the themes they're trying to engage with, while still wrapping up the conflict around that in a satisfying way. Kodaka, however, is the furthest thing from a good writer I can think of, which is where our secret third option comes in. The writer is a bigot, and or doesn't at all care about covering heavy topics in any nuanced way. After playing every Danganronpa game, watching the anime, reading most of the novels I can manage to stomach at this point, I can confidently say he is a bigot, very ignorant, and worst of all, he doesn't care. And he certainly doesn't feel like he has to. First, we can start with the inherent flaws in Danganronpa's writing, then move on to the really stinky, shit-crusted cage full of elephants I will, for now, neglect to mention. First of all, the dialogue. This is such an easy part to poke and prod at that I feel a bit dumb even mentioning it. Characters will constantly repeat what was just said. Like, just said. Just so another character who has less screen time can get a word in and feel like they matter. You point out a clue, someone is going to say exactly what it is and how you found it as if you didn't just work it out yourself. You shoot a truth bullet and start refuting someone's argument. Someone will respond, "Oh, I get it now!" as Nekomaru Nidai, and parrot exactly what you said to them back to you. Naegi finds something lying on the table? The conversation will go exactly like this.
Kirigiri, I think I found a photo!
A photo?
Yeah! I think it's a photo of you!
Of me? What would something like that be doing here?
Well, I found this photo of you on the desk with all those papers. There's some weird guy with you. Maybe it's your dad.
My father? And Kirigiri will look at the photo and go, "Ah yes, that is indeed my father." It's just so egregious. And Danganronpa fans will watch that scene and start to cry because they remember that one not so bad a dad animatic someone did. That isn't really very telling of what Kodaka was actually trying to achieve, even though it's way better than the one he was telling anyway, and is now lost media. Like, I think it was Pingy Love 100 who made it, something to that effect. But regardless, it's such a shame that entire video just got scrubbed from the internet. I think it happened to their busted animatic too. It's really unfortunate. I couldn't even find a thumbnail for the not so bad a dad one. Regardless, you get my point. Scene to scene, Danganronpa is a nightmare to read. Just accounting for how many lines could be so easily reassigned or cut. On top of that, this game has idiot plots aplenty. For those who don't know what an idiot plot is, it's the kind of plot that can only play out if every character acts out of character, for the sake of a story beat. It's the hand of the author in its most exposed state. Or at least that's how I'm gonna choose to use the term for the duration of the video. I think the actual trope is a bit different, but I don't care. Celeste being surprisingly bad at covering up her murders, or coming up with alibis. Leon showing up to Mizuno's room. Ishimaru doing anything Ishimaru does after Mondo dies. Mondo killing Fujisaki. Sakura committing suicide. Peko trying to spin herself as a serial killer. Despair disease in every aspect. Kaede not confessing to the murder she commits the moment she gets the wrong person killed. Angie miraculously being able to convince everyone her cult is cool and chill, actually. Gonta deciding to kill literally everyone rather than just talk to them. The list really goes on forever. Those were just some standouts. Writing something nonsensical and writing something in heightened reality are two very different things, and God, this game series never really comes to terms with that. Kodaka continuously confuses the two until he's written something so bad the two concepts are inseparable from each other, and he just releases the games anyway. And ooh, that makes me so fucking mad! Ugh, fucking infuriates me. What they are isn't ever that impressive either. Its villains are insanely one note and always harp on the same thematic core of hope versus despair in the same dumbed down method that they've tackled it since Trigger Happy Havoc. God, I forgot to mention in the dialogue portion, this series really likes waxing vanillosophical about this one specific conflict. In the same way, all Makoto Shinkai monologues essentially boil down to, "That light. It was her, shining so brightly in the sky I couldn't even bear to look at her anymore. But the stars, the sun, how will I ever be able to tell her apart from them? This sky, it's not the same as the one I watched with her in our early days. It's irreversibly changed. And so have we. It was winter now. Danganronpa will occasionally... sorry, that Makoto Shinkai model. Danganronpa will occasionally chime in with a monologue in the vein of,
"And so, Monokuma laughed as the elevator began its descent. Was it the arc that would carry us to an iridescent hope? Or was it the barge carrying us deeper into the wellspring of despair? Only time would tell."
And God, it gets so grating the more you'd hear it. I wouldn't be surprised if subtlety was the first word Kodaka said as a baby and promptly forgot the meaning of the moment he learned his second. Its themes are always very bare bones. Like, so bare bones that the monologue is really the only thing I can think of to even say about it. At every turn, once Trigger Happy Havoc was done, they had a chance to do something other than hope versus despair, but they never really do. Or like even just tackle the theme in a new and interesting way, which they don't do. Danganronpa 2 could have been about identity and how easily it can warp once your worldview is slightly changed. Ultra Despair Girls could have been about abuse and how to break its vicious cycle, like specifically familial and domestic abuse. About what happens when kids are encouraged to and rewarded when they engage with their abuser's tendencies. Identify themselves as broken and unfixable rather than hurt and healing. But no, because hope and despair are far too important to interweave with something so complex, like feelings, in any significant way that might draw attention away from the generic fight of good and evil. That would just be awful. Its murders often have contrived motives, are founded on conclusions that no sane person would have ever come to, and are all unraveled by the flashiest two-dimensional cardboard cutout ass cast I've ever seen. I just want to mention that I got that line in one take, and I'm kind of proud of myself. Yippee! That yippee took 3 takes. Normally, I'd say one-dimensional, but Danganronpa has a very specific philosophy for writing its characters, and that process consists of assigning a character 1 to 3 flanderizing traits, and then revealing one pseudo-complex thing about them later in the story. Just enough to convince somebody who doesn't care that they were actually interesting the whole time! And that, for anybody watching who wants to be a writer, is a terrible way to write your characters. At first, it sounds harmless enough, but in practice, it almost never goes well. And here, my friends, is the portion of the video that will take up the most of your precious seconds in the waking world. And if you're still watching, I'm so sorry. Naegi is a boring boy who turns out to be a good detective slash paragon. Kirigiri is a detached detective who is revealed to have a dead dad. Tagami is a rich sadistic asshole who turns out to not be rich anymore.
Ooh, scary.
Hagakure is a spineless male fail fortune teller, and he's also the first one on this list to not have a pseudo-interesting reveal later on. So, at least they're transparent. Toko is in love with Togami, believes she's gross and unlovable, and has awful writer serial killer DID. She's also the only one who didn't get her memories erased, because Genocider Show remembers the entire tragedy in bits and pieces they were awake for, which is interesting, but only for 2 seconds, until it loops back around to being frustrating, because then you think, oh, they didn't do anything with that. Asahina likes donuts and swimming, and is fake lesbians with Sakura, which I promise I will get to later. Leon is a baseball player, but quickly admits he hates baseball and wants to pursue music. This goes nowhere. Mizuno is an idol that pretends to be psychic. Why? Do not ask. Do not pass go. Do not receive $200. And her only interesting trait is that in Japan, everyone fully believed she was going to be the deuteragonist instead of Kirigiri, but is instead revealed to be the first murder victim. That doesn't matter to me. I am American. Mondo is the poster child for toxic masculinity and a fake gay, which, say it with me now, I will eventually get to, I promise. And he's revealed to have killed his brother. Fujisaki is a programmer, as you can tell by her socks. And she's also shy, so it'll be no surprise to you when I say that she is trans femme. And also, a laptop MacGuffin sometimes. Ishimaru is a bootlicking narc and a fake gay, on top of being a secret Super Saiyan, as you do. Hifumi's an incel. He's just an incel. Celeste is an elegant goth cunt who's actually like a low-class, nothing bourgeoisie wannabe. And also Fujisaki's favorite video game. Sakura is a quiet, buff, fake lesbian. And look, I could make an Among Us joke here. Moving on, Makuro Ikasaba is Junko Enoshima, and is actually the most nuanced character Kodaka ever manages to barely hint at the story of in Trigger Happy Havoc, but he killed her off for the sake of a twist and completely mishandles her from here on out, so I guess I can just go fuck myself and die. Junko acts like what a child imagines DID would look like, and also is despairful. That's not a word, but it's something Kodaka would make her say. Her last minute, I was interesting actually moment wasn't that bad, but it did cost me Makuro. So for that, I will be sentencing Junko Enoshima to read the Aeneid for 5 billion years.
5 billion Aeneids.
Hajime is a boring boy who is secretly good at everything because he had his brain ripped out and fiddled with by Hope's Peak. Chiaki is a sleepy gamer who turned out to be a sorting algorithm. Nagito is lucky, because that's a character trait, deranged, and has the worst dialogue about hope and despair I think could have possibly been written, and the closest thing he has to a secret I was interesting moment was finding out he has Junko's hand where his should be, which was pretty cool. Kazuichi is a Sonya-obsessed gearhead, and he, like Kagakure, is just stupid. Fuyuhiko is a baby-faced mafioso who turns out to be the only well-written character in any Danganronpa game. Akane is an athletic bimbo who joins the double uninteresting international flight to Kodaka's secret cardboard cutout fuck dungeon. Sonya is from a fake nonsense country and says fake nonsense things. And then she falls in love with Gundam. Gundam is a Chunibyo with hamsters who falls in love with Sonya. Peko is a sword-fighting bodyguard who is extremely emotionally repressed and subsequently fridged. Nekomaru is big, loud, needs to shit, and is a robot. Now he is. He wasn't before, he's a robot now! Ibuki is just a freak and a musician who is in the uninteresting nothing club, but God, I love her. Mahiru is a resident boy hater and photographer who turns out to be a secret, unrelated murderer. That's a surprise tool that we'll save for later. I'm not gonna, talk about it in this video, but it does exist. Don't watch the Danganronpa 3 anime, it sucks. Who would have guessed? Mikon is also in Kodaka's fuck dungeon, but is probably hung from the ceiling like a punching bag who turns out to be fucked up and evil. But everyone turns out to be fucked up and evil. So really, she just serves as bad foreshadowing. Hiyoko is fake lesbians with Mahiru, tiny and sadistic, and her special trait is that she's secretly tall! Riveting, I know. Byakuya is a fat stereotype who is also a well-meaning douchebag and is revealed to be the ultimate imposter like 5 chapters after he dies. No big deal. It's not like he could have spent that time being important. Fucking Danganronpa. Why would I ever have to try? Why would I ever have to write good characters? Wow, fucking Kazutaka Kodaka, kill me, put a fucking bullet in my head, Jesus Christ! This kind of thing has happened for like half the list, but for some reason I just felt the need to point this one out specifically. Teru is bisexual / neg, and a cook who is secretly Southern, which is irritatingly awful. Komaru is a hopeful bimbo and fake lesbian. God, there's so many. Who goes from being incapable to sort of being capable. Yes, I am unfortunately including Ultra Despair Girls because I hate it more than the average Danganronpa fan hates being critical of anything. Toko is still a bad DID rep, but now she's also a fake lesbian. Because we need more of those. Which is better, but still sucks. And the twist is that Komaru is the first person she ever forms a genuine connection with, which is pretty cute, but is muddled by so many issues that I promise, take a guess. Masaru is a baby jock wannabe protag who is beat or otherwise generally abused by his parents. God, how do they write even more generic characters? I'm gonna lose my mind. Jotaro is dumb and ugly parentheses, but is secretly perfectly fine and has like abusive parent body standards, which is a cool trait to give to a boy. I'm not gonna tell Kodaka that he did a good job because he didn't, but thought that was worth mentioning. Kodako is a girly girl child actress who went through the worst written depiction of sexual abuse I have maybe ever seen. Take a guess as to when I will cover that. Eventually, probably. Nagisa is gifted and acts as a faux adult in the group, and his parents kinda sorta microdosed him on meth to keep him awake so he can study longer and more efficiently, which fucking raw as hell. He also betrays the Warriors of Hope for a bit and tried to get Komaru and Toko to just leave, which was objectively the right thing to do given his character. Monica is Junko Jr. and also fake disabled. I'm not even gonna say it, but she created the Monokumas and is the successor to Despair or whatever, so that's something. She's also just a really good manipulator, and if she was handled by a better writer, which is to say any writer but Kodaka, she could have been a good thematic foil to Komaru's love and empathy for children no matter what they do or say. But we didn't get that, so I guess I'll just piss my fucking sweatpants and cry like a baby. Haiji wants to kill all children and is not so secretly an abusive nothing burger pedophile. Moving on. Asahina's brother and Fujisaki's dad are basically reskins of them that exist to do one irrelevant thing and die. Hagakure's mom is a MILF and she's forever uninteresting, and also serves to make every other would-be relative uninteresting by not allowing them to be in the plot. Side note, no remnants of despair in this game, other than Kameda. I know it's Kameda, go fuck yourself. None of them at all. This game's a fucking cesspit of wasted potential, Jesus Christ. Kaide fucks with Debussy, and is a Paragon / Shuichi Wrangler. They're also the fake protagonist, who didn't even actually murder anyone, which is interesting, but not because of anything she did or didn't do, so. Shuichi is replacement protagonist / boring boy detective, who's trying to be empathetic and overcome his perceived weakness. Rantaro is mysterious, and has a survivor perk. Kaido is the luminary of the stars and hates when people are sad. His thing is that he dies of sickness rather than being executed. He's also very homophobic, very often. Maki is Kirigiri, but a secret assassin and in love with Kaido instead of Shuichi. Miyu is horny and loud, but secretly meek. Ibo is a robot and becomes an audience surrogate. Can you tell I'm getting tired of this? Gonta likes Bug and was raised by wolves. His thing is that he tries to kill literally everyone for no reason. Kokichi is a liar Kameda and has a mastermind fake out that doesn't factor into fucking anything. Himiko is a magic baby. That's it. Tenko is a boy hater. I don't know what is with the trend here. Like, it's just Mahiru and Tenko, but it's still weird. She's also a Himiko lover. Himiko's not interested, and Tenko isn't interesting. Angie is a racial stereotype religious girly who also draws and later on indoctrinates half the cast into her cult. Ryoma killed someone with tennis. Sit with that for a second. And is a baby-faced ex-con with a deep voice who does nothing except for offer to let somebody kill him because he's a murderer and thinks he deserves to die, which is kind of cool. Nobody takes him up on that offer. Shame, honestly. Kurumi is a maid. She kills Ryoma and is boring. Korekiho is a freak. He's ancestral and a bad DID rep. He is just awful to his core. You can guess when I will talk about him. Tsumugi is quiet, boring cosplayer with fantasy illness. She turns out to be the mastermind, and the fact that she's most interesting when she's anyone but herself says everything I need to say about her and more. The Monocubs suck. Monodam does a coup d'etat once, and Monofini gets inflation fetished by Kodaka. So, yeah, pretty good games. Oh, it hurts to even say as a joke. Danganronpa fans are very good at, like, imagining a better game than the ones we play. And God, do people reach to make literally any of these nothing pieces of human trash worth anything to anyone. For reference, here's a list of characters I think, for the most part, avoid being so poorly written I literally hate them, while also having their potential explored to its fullest, at least in my eyes. Makoto, Makuro, Junko, Fuyuhiko, Peko, Sonya, Ibuki, Gundam, Nekomaru, Nagisa, Monica, Rantaro, and Gonta. That's it. That's all of them. 13 characters. Barely a commedia dell'arte, and not even enough characters to host a single killing game. On top of that, almost all of them have a huge asterisk next to them that I will now mercilessly strip away. Makuro is only just barely saved if you read Danganronpa If. Junko's only good in Trigger Happy Havoc. Peko is only good if you ignore her idiotic reason for killing Mahiro. And her, like, weird, I'm a serial killer, blah! There's no reason to do that. Why would you do that? Sonya, Gundam, Ibuki, and Nekomaru are only good if you don't care about any of them being actual people with wants and needs. Nagisa and Monica are only good if you forget about all of the other Warriors of Hope being complete ass, and the game they're in being ass, on top of Kodaka never really engaging with the themes that make them interesting in the first place, on top of some other stuff I will talk about not right now. Rantaro's only good because of a game we didn't get to see anything about. And Gonta's only good if you ignore his poorly contrived murder plot. So, there are only ever actually 2 characters that meet this criteria. 2! Out of the whole franchise! Makoto Naegi and Fuyuhiko Kuzuryu. But all of them had potential. Potential that Kodaka squandered because he's an awful writer that ruins every single thing he fucking touches. Because Makoto and Fuyuhiko only work if you ignore all this stupidly poorly written garbage that constantly happens around them. Oh, I hate this game so much, but I want to love it so bad. And that's just the normal bad writing. Now we have to deal with the horrible representation of anyone that isn't untraumatized, cis, het, white, able-bodied, mentally sound, male? And Jesus fucking Christ, is it bad? But first, for my health, and for your sanity, I want to take a break to cool off, and talk about my disdain for a specific design choice that I think was the anchor that dragged this game down to hell like it was Goku slipping off of Snake Way. The importance of free time, and how lacking you are of it at any given moment. In the base game, there's a mechanic where you can talk to characters when you have a free second and spend a few hours bonding with them. The glaring issue being, if I want to talk to Leon and see all there is to see in his free time events, I have to know he'll be the first to die, give up my time with Mizuno and dedicate it to him, hope that I have enough free times to use before Mizuno dies and I'm locked out of his events forever. There are only 2, you can get it, but like I still have to know that he's gonna die. And listen to me when I say this. This is the only way to experience the free time events in any Danganronpa game. When you do finally get to the post-game, hoping that you might get a glimpse of all the stuff you missed. The only thing waiting for you is a dumb character Q&A every now and then, coupled with one scene per character at the end. One real scene where something happens. And they're all awful all the time. All of the interesting character stuff that I've been begging to see is locked behind the worst assignment of homework I've ever had. Running through the awful game I just wasted my life playing again. And also, that's not even the interesting character stuff I wanted! It's a nothing dating sim where the characters give you their underwear because Kodaka is a fucking freak asshole. And ugh! That was supposed to act as a distressor. Do you think if I put Kodaka down as my 13th reason, he might just stop making things forever? Would be nice. I would do it. I've saved the trigger warning for this portion of the video because none of the stuff I really talked about before went into this kind of thing super heavily. So, you know, Danganronpa continuously depicts incest, transphobia, homophobia, ableism, misrepresentation of DID, poor portrayal of sibling and child abuse, sexism, poor depiction of sexual assault victims, heavy sexualization of minors, full-on pedophilia, racism, and probably a lot more awful shit I forgot to even mention. So I'm gonna do my best to talk about these in the order that I detailed on this list. I think Danganronpa's only depiction of incest lies with Korekiyo, but this also ties into a million other things I will sort of segue into when we get to. Korekiyo has this really weird relationship with his sister who sexually abused him as a child, and whenever he takes off his mask, it's revealed that his alter is also, everyone in Danganronpa only has one alter, because God forbid a system gets to thrive. It's revealed that his one alter is the sister who abused him. This factors into nothing. Let me repeat that. There is no reason for this to be in the story. Not a single one. The justification they try to give him is that he was a serial killer before this, and is attempting to kill 100 women he deems pure enough to spend the afterlife with his dead sister. But if you don't know, everyone in Danganronpa V3 is a normal person who entered the killing game of their own free will and had personalities grafted onto them by Team Danganronpa. And like, which dev in universe or otherwise would be down for this? How would old Korekiyo feel that they turned him into someone who's a poor depiction of sexual assault victims, technically incestuous, and is a bad DID rep? We never find out! Because God forbid Danganronpa does something interesting. Even though that's the only part of him that's actually interesting. Yay! Because whoever made that decision on Team Danganronpa not only stands by it, they genuinely believe it's necessary to the story they've written, which I promise you, it is not. You see what I mean when I say I'll do my best to tackle these in order? So many of these gross things blend into each other and it's hard to tell even where to start. I keep remembering shit halfway through my talking points that's like 3 times worse than the last thing I said. There's even a bit in his Love Suite event where he says that he would be interested in having sex with somebody out of curiosity, even if it wasn't consensual. And topping that statement off by saying he would never truly love any of them though. And his only true love is his sister, which is disgusting. Also, Danganronpa V3 has love hotel events where Shuichi shares an intimate moment with one of the cast members. They're all gross all the time, and doubly add to the gross sexualization of minors Danganronpa is already known for. There are multiple bath scenes throughout the games, scenes where Komaru gets her clothes cut off, Monokuma's getting hot and bothered over the prospect of kids fucking each other under his watch, which really means Junko is doing that, which is like, okay, still gross. Yeah, no, it's still just gross. Don't forget all of the vile scenes of Mikon falling over into bondage, or just even worse, gratuitous panty shots. Or the episode of the anime where every member of Yukizome's class takes aphrodisiacs and nearly fucks each other. It's all bad, all of the time, and that isn't even all of it. Korekiyo also has, like, a tad bit of gender dysphoria where he like kind of wants to be his sister, which if they are trans is an even worse depiction of trans people than Fujisaki. And rather than talking about him anymore, I think I should just move on before I lose my mind and dedicate this entire section to Korekiyo, which I feasibly could do. The easiest things to get out of the way are next. So rest easy knowing we'll be done with these topics in a second. Fukawa is also poor rep of DID who self-harms to artificially induce a switch, and her alter is also a serial killer, so that's 2 for 2 for that trope. The only reason she exists is to facilitate a red herring, so it'd be very easy to spin her as a singlet, as in somebody who isn't a system, who plays a character to absolve herself of the accountability for the murders she commits. But that obviously isn't the case. And not to say that, like, having a DID rep is bad. It's great, actually, and I never see anyone do it right. But, Kodaka is awful and shouldn't be trusted with anything. While we're back on Trigger Happy Havoc, Fujisaki is an awful trans rep across the board. Funny that they predicted some of the trans girl stereotypes that are prevalent today, but that certainly wasn't intentional. Kodaka at every turn paints Fujisaki as a delusional boy who wants to be a woman to cope with their weakness and inability to change. This is fucking brain dead. She is a woman, and she always will be. But when Danganronpa 2 came around, and they released a bundle of these first 2 games, they released a post-game feature called School Mode to exist alongside Danganronpa 2's Island Mode. This is the one that I mentioned earlier that's got like the Q&As that are literally nothing, with one scene at the end that's kind of like also a dating sim with the underwear. It's basically a glorified dating sim. That's what you need to know. And in Chihiro's route, if you can even call it that, Kodaka doubles down on this philosophy towards her gender and identity. Kodaka is a transphobic fucking pig, and I hate him to the core of my being. And that's all I really have to say about that. No, wait! Fuck! I forgot! Kirigiri literally inspects her body, fondles her crotch after she's dead, and outs her to everyone. Which Monokuma could have just, like, said, hey, that's... so this is the thing? Instead of, like, going upstairs and... Oh, God, this is awful. God, this fucking game is awful. I fucking hate Kodaka. I hate him, I hate him, I hate him, I hate him, I hate him! So, Kodako is a can of worms all on her own. When she was still acting, it's implied that the producers and other various scumsuckers would sexually abuse her when they got her alone. And one of the things that they tell her is that they promised that they would be gentle. So you can understand why now, whenever she hears that word, she has a breakdown and feels like her world's about to end. And there's this really good scene where Monica beats the shit out of her, promising that she'll never be gentle like those awful men who took advantage of her, and vows to always be sadistic and cruel when she requires it. This is one of the only good scenes she's in. There's also a scene she has with Komaru where she says that she's gonna kill the people that hurt her for as long as she can remember. Komaru argues that not all adults are like the ones that abused her, but Kodako shoots back with,
then why didn't anyone save me? If the world is so good, why didn't anyone help me escape?
Which, yeah, what do you say to that? She's 12 and she's hurt, and arguably, this is what Danganronpa is about at its core. Abused children, sometimes teenagers, that lash out at the world who hurt them because they feel like they have no other choice. Which is interesting! Really interesting! But as I mentioned before, is never actually explored in any significant way. And literally right after this, Kodako captures Komaru, and you'll never guess, controls robot hands that sexually assault her. Would Kodako do this based on the character that Kodaka's established so far? No. No, she wouldn't. Is it awful regardless? Yes! It's worse even! Sexual assault victims, even ones like Kodako, would never act like this. Even if they wanted to hurt people in the way that Kodako does. I don't think that a sexual assault victim would wish this on fucking anybody, much less perform it themselves. Kodako is 12, and all it does is serve to characterize abused children as potential abusers. Which, yes, in some cases that happens, but you're creating a piece of media with no other abused elementary schoolers who are trying to do the right thing. There are no good examples to contrast all of the awful ones that Kodaka's constantly throwing in our face, which is why his representation of pretty much anyone is always horrible. I'll talk about the importance of this more in the next section, but I have to mention, this is so harmful to children who have been sexually abused. This makes me so mad that it even exists. It's just... ugh. Also, Haiji, Monika's brother, is a casual pedophile. Not particularly important to anything, just thought it was worth mentioning. On top of the awful portrayals of child abuse, the sisterly abuse isn't particularly strong either. In Danganronpa 1 and If, it's fine. It's just fine. But the moment we start adding the anime into the mix, it just falls apart at the seams. She has this really weird Stockholm sister complex towards Junko, and it's all gross, bordering on incest territory with some ways they depict it. Danganronpa really has a way of ruining every character I specifically love in the matter of seconds. I hate it so much. The only blatant homophobia I can think of off the top of my head is like half the dialogue that comes out of Kaito, but there is a lot of worse, more lampshaded homosexuality throughout. Ibuki is constantly making jokes about being a lesbian and even has a quote along the lines of, "The wonderful world of girl love is slippery when wet." And it would be great if they ever actually let Ibuki be a lesbian. Teruteru's bisexual, but he's such a creep that all it serves to do is make gay people look like sexual deviants. Mondo and Ishimaru are coded to be gay, but never really get there, and the closest confirmation we get is a weird soul-mending Super Saiyan power-up after Mondo dies, which I can't even begin to explain because it makes no sense. Asahina and Sakura are lesbian coded but not allowed to be together or directly acknowledge it. Komaru and Toko have insanely lesbian subtext, but it's constantly undercut by Toko's freak obsession with Tagami. No one is ever allowed to be gay, trans, or anything that Kodaka isn't, unless they're poorly mishandled by the freak asshole writing them. Also, Monica isn't actually disabled, she's been pretending this entire time. But then she gets crushed under rubble, and it looks like she might get crippled for real, but she comes back in the anime with her legs like nothing happened, so I guess we can also safely add ableism to the list. Yippee! The only racist thing I can think of is Kodaka ripping a Tua from Polynesian religion, which is bad for obvious reasons based off of what I've already told you about her. But yeah. This game's kind of a masterpiece, right?
Oh, God, it doesn't get easier. It doesn't get easier to joke about it. It really doesn't.
So, now you know all the awful, horrendous shit that takes place in this awful, 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 disgusting, nasty game. So what, right? Why does it matter? Why shouldn't Kodaka be allowed to put incest, transphobia, homophobia, ableism, misrepresentation of DID, poor portrayal of sibling and child abuse, sexism, poor depiction of sexual assault victims, heavily sexualization of minors, full-on pedophilia, and racism into his game? Well, it's because he's a bad writer. And like I said before, bad writing comes before bad representation. And bad representation passes on those ideals to the people who see it. How do I know that? Because I got into this series when I was 12. And it made it easier to justify bigoted beliefs that I had internalized from my family in the state that I lived in. I guess I still live there. It sucks. Don't come here. I'm trans femme. I don't think that's exactly a secret, especially considering that I've been slipping in and out of femme voice this entire video. I need water so bad. And when I saw Fujisaki's identity invalidated in Trigger Happy Havoc when I was a kid, it made me feel like those people weren't right in the head. Because that's how Kodaka portrayed them. I believed trans people were just delusioned goons who pretended to be the opposite gender as a form of escapism. Because that's how Kodaka portrayed them. Keep in mind, I was 12, so I've grown a lot. Boobs, specifically. Tits, big ones! But this is the problem. If Fujisaki had just been allowed to be trans, would I have met a trans person in real life when I was a kid and still thought they were weird? Would I have started having second thoughts about my gender earlier than I did? Yeah, probably. And what about DID people? If I had met a system before I had a brain in my fucking head, instead of Danganronpa cringe compilation number shit trillion, I would have had such an awful perception of them. Taka and Mondo being one long drawn out gay joke certainly affected my perception of gay people. It made it so much easier for little shitheels like I was to throw out slurs and tell people that they're wrong for doing what makes them happy. This is the kind of shit that creates insufferable anime fans. I know, because I was one, and it was awful. I'm also fat, and the ultimate imposter made me feel like a punchline instead of a person. And characters like Hifumi and Teruteru instantly warped my perception of women and sex. It nudged me towards the conclusion that sexuality is a corruption that ran down to my core just because I was AMAB. And they were telling me to indulge in it, to let my sexuality turn me into a person that acts more like the worst trope to ever exist, rather than a person with a feeling. And that's perpetuated by most people, too. The myth that all teenage boys are sex-crazed freaks that you have to keep wrangled, otherwise their desire will overtake them and ruin someone's life. Thankfully, anyone with a brain is able to realize that that's not the case. The actual case being, when you give teenage boys an itemized list of shitty things they can do to women that will be completely forgiven by everyone around them, what do you think is going to happen? If you say teenagers are sex-crazed freaks, they will think that's okay and expected of them. If they're particularly impressionable or raised by shit heels, they'll internalize it and make it their personality. And what does that do for any women who will eventually have the insane displeasure of interacting with these fuckheads? You already know the answer, because men being creeps is commonplace and an accepted danger of living in the world, which is insane, but perpetuated and made easier to accept when you see it in media. Media written by shitheads like Kodaka. So, tell me, what's gonna happen when a poor little kid gets sexually abused and tries to find solace in a silly little video game they found on the shelf at the store that has people like Kodako Utsugi in it? This is why representation is important, because it shapes people's perception of what's acceptable and what isn't. And that's something that if Kodaka was a good writer, he would care about. But here we are. So with all that said, why do so many people even like this steaming pile of dog shit? Well, I can tell you the few reasons I used to enjoy it, and sometimes still manage to. The character designs always bang. The visual novel trial stuff always has an amazing aesthetic, even though the backgrounds are disgusting and bad. It alludes to being interesting like 70% of the time. The mysteries in Danganronpa 1 and 2, for the most part, are fun to unravel. And most of all, Danganronpa fans are amazing at playing the games and imagining something far more interesting in their head. I'd say they're experts, honestly. At least the ones that aren't Hifumi Yamada IRL. Like Kodaka. But an unfortunate byproduct of this is people have a bad habit of endlessly praising the game and just ignoring its faults. Which, they're pretty glaring faults! That's fine. I'm not here to say that people shouldn't be allowed to love something if it's poorly written or harmful. But it doesn't give me a lot of hope for creators inspired by it. I'm talking specifically about the people who like to say shit like,
"Man, Danganronpa is so good when you don't have someone in your ear telling you it's bad."
Which is a take I see very often for some reason. And I'm sure if you watched this far into the video, you can see the issue with. Saying that media like this is good rather than occasionally enjoyable is harmful to creation as a whole, and critique of these things is the only thing that allows people to be better. And you can still enjoy the thing regardless. Some people are able to just look past the flaws in a piece of media in service of enjoying it, and I'm very happy for them. But please, if you're watching, for the love of God, do not delude yourself into thinking Danganronpa is a well-written franchise, or paints anyone that isn't exactly like Kodaka in a positive light. Enjoy it, expand upon it, but I'm begging you, do not endorse it. Misplaced hopes do no better for you than wallowing in your room alone. Don't place your hope in Kodaka. Don't give him credit for the things he consistently never does. Put your hope in the writers inspired to be better than him, and hold the man himself accountable to help set a precedent for those who will come after. Putting your faith in the right people can change the future for the better. So if you love the game this awful piece of dog shit could have been, if it staffed a competent writer as much as I do, and feel driven to be better in spite of Kodaka's success, the pedophilic, racist, sexist, transphobic, homophobic, and all around just awful, disgusting freak that somehow made the worst but probably most popular visual novel series ever made. The man who can get away with being awful because people like what his poorly written video games could have been. Please, when you close this video and move on with your life, next time you put pencil to paper or finger to keyboard again, handle our faith with care. I'm sure you've noticed by now, it's terribly fragile. Ugh! God, this game is a curse! Regardless, I hope you enjoyed the video. I know it wasn't particularly flashy or well edited as my other stuff, and all I can really say is I'm sorry. I hate video editing, like, to my fucking core. Writing, recording, and editing the audio are the fun portions for me, which sounds like, oh, well, video editing is only like 1/4 of that, so it can't be that bad. But realistically, when I edit in the style I've been going for with the video essays so far, it's more like 3/4 of the process. And when 3/4 of a project isn't fun to make, it never gets made. I've written like, God, 10 to 15 video scripts and like 30 outlines for videos I want to make, and they all went in the trash. At least a couple of them are good, but I can't do them until I'm employed again for secret reasons. So for now, you'll have to deal with something a little more low effort until I find myself a happy medium along the way. Regardless, if you made it this far, thank you for watching my video. Trans rights are human rights. Abuse victims aren't inherently bad.
On March 26, 2025, Kazutaka Kodaka will have a heart attack alone in his fuck dungeon and no one will ever find him.
And I hope I see you in the next one. Go check these people out and go write something better than Danganronpa. Please, I'm begging you. It'd be so easy. Please, I'm begging.
It's